Welcome to the Undercurrent, your source for grassroots news. I'm Lauren Windsor. Last week, Mitch McConnell spoke to the Young Professionals Association of Louisville to make his pitch for re-election to the Senate for a 6th term. I went to the event to ask the senator to elaborate on how he would go after Democrats on financial services, as he told donors at the June Koch retreat in audio obtained by the Undercurrent. Senator McConnell doubled down on those remarks, calling the Dodd-Frank legislation enacted in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis Obamacare for banks.
In 2008, our friends on the other side had a really good election. A brand new president with a 40-seat majority in the House, 60 votes in the Senate. If you have normal lives and you're not a political junkie, you may not know that 51 is a majority, but 60 is control. Because a lot of the things we do in the Senate require supermajority. So the president and his team could do what they wanted to do, and they did it. For example, the $1 trillion stimulus, Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, which I describe as Obamacare for banks.
You mentioned earlier that Dodd-Frank was like Obamacare for the banks. Can you just explain that? I mean, I know that Louisville went through the foreclosure crisis particularly hard, and a lot of people in my family were really hurt by the financial crisis in 2008. So why would you want to deregulate banks?
Yeah, let me just say that the big guys who created the problem are just fine. They can live with Dodd-Frank. The problem is the community banks and small bankers and the credit unions who were getting hit. None of them had anything whatsoever to do with what happened back in 2008. They're the ones who are having to raise prices and lay off people. The big guys who apparently will be able to stay big forever, because one of the other things Dodd-Frank did was to create too big to fail in perpetuity. In other words, if you are designated now as too big to fail, you know you'll never fail. So, in fact, I think it did exactly the opposite of what we should have been doing. So I do think it was a mistake. And
I'm sorry, you think that Dodd-Frank is a mistake or just deregulation?
Dodd-Frank was a mistake, yes.
But
yeah.
So would you support regulating banks
Well,
more stringently?
Regulating banks since the Woodrow Wilson administration, and absolutely. The question is it a good idea in a piece of legislation called the Wall Street Bill to make sure that nobody on Wall Street ever fails again? In other words, it sets up criteria that allow an agency to declare that you're a systemically important institution. And if you are, you're home free because you know the government will be there for you. In other words, we've made too big to fail a policy in perpetuity. And it has seeped down to community banks and credit unions, who are the ones who are having the biggest problem trying to figure out how to pick up the cost. I know a guy down in Texas who runs a mortgage business, and he said the cost of processing a mortgage has gone up $1,000 for him. Now, of course, that's passed on to the borrower. So I just think it was the wrong reaction to what happened. I don't think perpetuating too big to fail is a good idea. I think that's what got us in that situation in the first place. And I don't think, sideswiping community banks and credit unions who had nothing whatsoever to do with it is good policy.
While McConnell professed to care that Wall Street banks are still too big to fail, he notably did not advocate breaking them up. Further, he has refused to sign on to bipartisan legislation introduced by Senator Elizabeth Warren that would reinstate and modernize Glass-Steagall, the Depression-era law that provided a firewall between risky investment banking and safe commercial banking. I approached McConnell after his speech and asked him to provide policy alternatives that he would support in lieu of Dodd-Frank, but he offered none. He repeated that we must stop too big to fail, but again, he offered no prescription on how to do so. I asked the senator if he would support defunding the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and he said definitely, as it was the biggest part of the Dodd-Frank bill. For context, Republicans bitterly opposed even including the CFPB in the original Wall Street reform bill, and have been trying to torpedo it ever since. Their latest attempts have been to try to defund the agency during the budget appropriations process with writers, a tactic that McConnell infamously championed in the Koch retreat audio released by the Undercurrent.
What Mitch McConnell gave them was a picture of what that dream come true would look like on the Senate floor. And that dream was caught on audio tape, which surfaced today in The Nation and on the Undercurrent website.
Despite Republican attempts to undermine the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the agency has already returned billions of dollars, billions with a B, to American consumers from banks who have engaged in predatory lending practices. Bottom line, with $5.3 million in donations from 2013 to 2014, the finance industry is the #1 contributor to Mitch McConnell's campaign committee. And Mitch McConnell is the finance industry's #1 recipient of campaign cash this cycle, according to OpenSecrets.org. Has the finance industry decided that Senator Mitch McConnell is too big to fail? I'm Lauren Windsor. Thanks for watching. Get pulled in to the Undercurrent.
Undercurrent under the surface makes the mainstream get so nervous. It's time for purpose, for news to serve us, not with propaganda they use to hurt.